In this lecture, let's take a moment to explore the various resources at our disposal for WordPress development. Throughout this course, I've been throwing links at you for various functions. In my opinion, WordPress is very well documented. However, it is very large. Being able to navigate the documentation will help you with your journey as a developer. You can follow along with me by checking out the links in the resource section of this lecture. First things first, we should make a distinction between the two sites. If we were to search for WordPress, two results would appear, which are WordPress.com and WordPress.org. They have similar domain names, but there's one huge distinction between them. The .com domain is a hosting platform for WordPress. After we're finished developing a WordPress site, the next step is to upload our code to a hosting provider. There are dozens of providers available that exclusively deal with WordPress sites. The WordPress.com hosting platform is just one of the many hosts available. It's completely optional to upload your code to this platform. Let's keep moving forward. The .org domain does not host sites. Instead, it'll host the original source code of WordPress. It's the same code you'll find in the app/public directory of our local installation. WordPress is 100% open source. There are no fees associated with downloading WordPress. We can download WordPress, read the code, and modify it. If you're interested in downloading the source code of WordPress, you can do so at the .org domain. Throughout this course, we're going to be spending most of our time on this site. Let's keep exploring. Under Support, click Documentation. This part of the site will provide documentation on WordPress's features. This documentation will go over the basics of WordPress, such as installation and configuration. It's aimed at individuals who don't know how to code. The technical details of WordPress are not documented on this part of the site. WordPress documents the technical details elsewhere. Scroll to the bottom of the page. On the footer, there's a link for developers. Let's click on it. The developer site is aimed at programmers. It's going to be your most valuable resource as a developer. Before digging deeper, there's another resource worth mentioning. It's called Codex. The Codex was the original place for WordPress documentation. Back in the early days, WordPress used the Codex resource for everything, from code examples to simple explanations about the user system. However, as WordPress grew, the documentation became bloated with information. It was difficult to navigate for technical and non-technical users. As a result, they've separated the developer and user-friendly documentation. The Codex resource is no longer supported. In a few years, it'll be completely removed. From time to time, the Codex resource contains code examples. The WordPress team has not completed the transition from the Codex resource to the developer resource. It's a work in progress. In almost all instances, you'll want to refer to the documentation on the developer resource. The Codex resource will eventually be retired. The developer resource is kept up to date with the latest changes in WordPress. Let's learn how to take advantage of this resource. The main page of the developer resource will contain links to different topics of WordPress. For example, if we want to learn about themes, we can click on the Themes section. We'll be exploring these topics throughout this course. Most sections will take you to a handbook to learn the basics of each feature. The most important section is the Code Reference section. Let's check it out. The Code Reference section allows us to search through WordPress's codebase. Below the search form, there's a quick overview of the changes made to the WordPress core. This is a really great way to check out what functions have been added. On the right, there's a list of APIs available in WordPress. We'll be exploring most of these functions throughout the course. Let's take a look at how to search for code. You don't need to follow along for this part. You can sit back and relax. In the search form, let's try searching for the blog info function. This is one of the functions we've learned about. The reference will return a few results. Let's check out the first result. WordPress does an incredible job of documenting its functions. If we're interested in learning about a specific piece of code, we'll be able to search for it through the code reference. This page will document everything you'd like to know about the function. Let's run through it together. We've already reviewed the description, parameters, and more information sections. These sections are self-explanatory. The next section of this page is called Source. The Source section documents the original function definition. WordPress is completely transparent with its codebase. You can study WordPress's functions for a better understanding of its behavior. WordPress will even give you the file name. Down further, there's another section called Related. WordPress functions are not just used by us, but by other WordPress functions. Sometimes the documentation may not give enough information. In those cases, seeing how WordPress uses its functions may provide clarity. You'll find some great examples by reading through the WordPress code. Next is the changelog section. This section will document the changes made to a function. As you can see, this function definition has been around since version 0.71. As I stated previously, WordPress is a popular choice because most code you write will be comparable with earlier versions. Not as early as this version, but you shouldn't have any problems with a few versions back. The last section is the User Contributed Notes section. This section allows for other developers to share additional tips about this function. It's a great way to see how other developers tackle problems in WordPress. As you can see, the developer resource is incredibly handy. Be warned, not all pages are like this. Some pages are not as documented as well as the blog info function. Luckily, the most commonly used features are well documented. I know this lecture is introducing a lot of resources. As time goes on, we will get a lot of practice with how we can use these resources for developing plugins and themes. To reiterate, the developer resource provides information pertaining to the code of WordPress. A lot of this information is technical and aimed at developers. Before ending this lecture, let's explore a site called Automatic. Automatic is a company that makes huge contributions to the WordPress software. They own plugins such as Jetpack and WooCommerce. They don't own WordPress. However, they have significant influence over the open source project. Automatic owns the .com domain of WordPress, but they do not own WordPress itself. It is very important to make that distinction. Anyway, that's about it. Let's continue our journey in the next lecture.